All right. Hello there. Good afternoon, and
Good afternoon.
welcome to our Amplified Solutions webinar on developing operational systems for real estate. My name is Lee Adkins. I'm joined by the amazing, wonderful, and very smart Chris McDonough.
Hello.
We are going to talk operations today. Really excited to dive into this topic. Chris and I will give a little of our background. We both come from an operational real estate background that's pretty deep and pretty varied. But also, just a quick note that at Amplified Solutions, we provide follow-up boss consulting help and fractional operations. So that means we help you set up or manage your follow-up boss account. And the fractional operations, a lot of times, Chris, it's in tandem with the CRM, right? Because we're developing systems that need to be mimicked in the CRM or need to be created in a doc or a handbook. But what are some of the operational things that we can do for people in fractional ops?
Absolutely. It's really the best way to describe the Swiss Army knife of operations. Some of the teams that we work with aren't ready to bring on a full-time operations staff member or a director of ops. So they have the ability to work on projects with us that vary from anything from coaching their leadership, coaching their operations leadership or sales leadership, to developing systems, writing SOPs, creating training systems for their agents, building automations, making sure their other vendors are tied in well to and talking to very well with their follow-up boss account. So anything that you would do at that operational level, and we're going to be talking a lot about it today, building recruiting systems, lead management, helping you retain your agent, offboarding and onboarding. I always describe it to people as we do the things that no one else likes to do. We're the nerds in the corner writing your training manual and training your agents on how to do whatever it is you want us to do. So
Great.
we
That's a
have
great way to
this.
phrase that. I always joke and love you real estate people that are on watching or watching the recording, but I always joke that a lot of real estate people, the operation part of their brain is like just not that. It's like, so I say operations is all the stuff that's not sales, right? It's
Right.
not contracts, although it could be turning in contracts and managing those contracts, but all the things that are not sales. So we really pride ourselves in that. And Chris, like you said, for whatever reason, we're the weirdos that actually like to dig into that stuff. Hence the webinar. So,
As my dad would say, the world needs ditch diggers too.
right, takes all of us. Takes all of us. So I'll give a little bit of background just for context and relevance. I've literally worn every hat in real estate. I started as a solo agent. I've been on a team. I run a team at an operational level, at a pretty high operational level. Done a ton of consulting work. There's Nat. Ton of consulting work, and I've also run team and brokerage. So all the hats, all the things, all the models. And obviously now we work with clients across the country in a million different formats. So, and Chris, what's your background and what do you do?
What do you do?
What do
I
you do
have a
around
really interesting background. I came into grave diggers, maybe
here?
sometimes. When I was a broker, I was a grave digger. I would send your license back to the
You're
state.
out.
No, I came to real estate by way of a marketing and then publishing background. I was the publisher for a publishing house. And then I got into real estate. And my then CEO discovered my secret set of skills and asked me to be broker in charge for we grew the company from around 50 to about 225 agents and had a 30-person operations team, 9 different locations across 2 states. So I'm very familiar with scaling, growth, and setting up an infrastructure to support multiple MLSs, lots and lots of agents, and pretty much anything else a real estate company might need. So
All the other thing, all the hats. So,
yes.
and Chris, also tell us just a little bit. I'm gonna drop a link about your primer web series, and then we'll dig right in.
Yes, so we have a wealth of knowledge on our YouTube page, pretty much anything you want to learn about Follow Up Boss, and also many topics on operations are in there. But I host a web series once a month where we really dig into the foundations of real estate. So there's special guests sometimes. We talk about the mental aspects of being in real estate. So please tune in and join us. You can subscribe to any of our playlists. Bridget also has a great webinar called Getting Fubbed Up with Bridget that I really enjoy, and she dives deep into topics there. So we have a wealth of knowledge there for you. So if you don't like joining us live for webinars, you can visit us anytime there.
Awesome. Love it. So yeah, let's dig into some of these processes, Chris. I know you've got a really good list of them. Interestingly enough, we've framed our webinars around some of these. So I'm going to drop some links in as we go if we've previously done sessions on these. But we're going to cover all of these topics today best we can in a 1 hour-ish time frame.
Yes. So if it seems like we're going fast, we've dig deep into some of these already, but we wanted to talk to you, I guess, since it's a webinar, about the types of systems that you need to be developing for your real estate system. So we're going to, if we haven't already dug deep on each one of these, we're going to in future webinars. We have one coming up soon with one of our vendor besties on transaction coordination. We're going to be doing that in November, so stay tuned for that. But we really want you today to think about your business as a whole. So we're going to be looking a little bit at the 10,000 foot view. So looking at your real estate organization and thinking about the main points of your spider web, and whether you're a team of one with aspirations to grow, or you're a team of 2,000, and bless you if you are, you need to have these sort of tenets of operational support. So the things we're going to be talking about today are recruiting, lead generation, onboarding, training, lead management, retention, transaction management, your client experience or your past client engagement, and your offboarding. So another name for this webinar might be everything all at once. But you have to understand that in order to grow and scale a real estate business, you have to be thinking about all of these things simultaneously. Yes, your plates, yes, like an everything bagel, you're going to have your plates spinning. But if you and some might stop spinning and fall, and you pick them back up. But working on these and developing systems as you go for these different tenets that we're going to go into, these are the main ones you need to focus on. Everything else will fall into place under one of these categories.
And Chris, I think to mention this early up front, I think the carrot for a lot of people is thinking about what it's going to look like when you have these. Nobody, right, except for maybe us, are excited about figuring out all the pieces of these. But the goal is that ultimately you do have a system for everything. You can hire somebody to take this piece over, whether it's a VA or a live person in your office. So the goal is to really build these and then either find a system, a software tool to help you do them, find a human to help you do them, whatever. But your life will be better when you have these. And I know a lot of times people are so caught up in the day-to-day that they don't have time to do this. And so one thing I would always like to mention to people, if you're not really that big yet, and you're looking to do it, this is a great time to start to do this. Yeah, they're going to break and have to be edited, iterated on as you grow. But if you have more time now to get these right, it's going to pay dividends in the future. And I can tell you, I know a lot of the people I can see from the chat, are people that have been doing this for a while and done all the things and tried this system and tried that system and hired this person and done that. We've all done that. So it's not, I wish it was as beautiful as our webinar outline, but these are things you have to eat the elephant, one thing at a time. And it really will pay dividends when you get there.
It does. And the reason why you want to start structuring this and building a skeleton for your operations is because if you build systems around each of these things, you're going to reduce the amount of micro decisions that are made, not only with yourself, but across your organization, so that everyone can really have both a great experience And also you can focus your creative energy on other things like your marketing or whatever it is, your new listing presentation. The more you document, the more you develop SOPs. This is how we do this. And you might look at your organization and go, well, we don't have standards. We don't have SOPs. Yes, you do. The way you do things now are your standards. And if you want to build upon them and improve upon them, just document it the way you do it now. Because if someone can come in and say, oh, a Zillow lead just came in, what do I do? They don't have to make those micro decisions and potentially make the wrong decision. They know the flow of where it should go. What communication should it get? Which part of communication is automated? Which needs to be a real person? So that's one of your big takeaways here, is that's the why behind why you want to do this. That's why you want to make time to set up these systems. You're going to have increased efficiency. You're going to have scalability and improved customer service, which will then lead to more referrals to help you grow your business.
Absolutely. And what's the first step in this, Chris? So I think, in my mind, it's where are you at right now? And just being really honest with yourself. If you don't have any of this, great, fine. Just be like, hey, I don't have any of this. If you have some of it and it's not super organized, fine. But I think I've always said it starts with a deep self-assessment of both yourself and your business to start to say like, hey, I've had a lot of hard conversations with people in operations. I've said like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have a team. Maybe you should just sell houses and keep all the money. Or, hey, maybe you shouldn't buy that thing at that conference because it's not going to really move the needle for you.
Yeah. And it's knowing what not to do as much as it's knowing what it is to do. And I think you and I could probably write several books. Yes. About what not to do. But taking a look at your systems, not only looking at where do you need improvement, but also what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? And if you are looking ahead at your goals, so I want to double my amount of transactions. I want to bring on this many agents. What are the things that you need to teach them on a day-to-day basis that they need to do? So always start with the fundamentals. How do you convert a lead? How do you enter a lead into the system? How do you generate a lead? Those types of fundamentals to help you. What am I trying to say here? The things that are going to move your business forward the most are the things that you need to document first. Because if I can find someone else and bring them in and have them help me pull the wagon, those are the things I want them doing right away. I don't want them worried about the details just yet. I want them making those big strokes, those big pulls on the wagon. So thinking about first, what are those big pulls? What are the big swings that really move your business forward? And then documenting your process for those, because even if you think you don't have a process, it's there. It's the way you do it. And that'll make it easier for you to teach other people. So when it comes to doing this assessment of your operations, if you have other people that work with you, the first thing you need to do is talk to them. Talk to people inside your organization, talk to your clients, your vendors. What's your experience like working with us? Where do you see things are going well? Where do you see things maybe aren't going well? Talk to your closing attorney. I used to talk to my closing attorney 3 times a month if it wasn't related to a specific contract. I would just call them up and say, hey, how are things going? What are you seeing? Where can we get better? Ask those questions and make sure you're being very receptive to feedback, because you might get some feedback that you don't love. So talk to those people and get feedback to see where you can shore up your operations. Yes, there will be a recording, and we're going to send that out tomorrow, including every single link that we share. So you won't miss a thing, Monique. You can also assess your current operations by using anonymous surveys. So some people might not be comfortable giving you feedback to your face or via email. So send out anonymous surveys, and do make sure that they are anonymous. Don't ask for questions like who's your team lead and fishing
Who's your
questions.
favorite person on the team? Yeah,
Exactly.
we used to actually do this as an offering, more like the 360 feedback thing, and it's wonderful to get this intel. But Chris, you made such a good point. You've got to be open to it. Like, we're asking these things, you've got to be open to it. And it's certainly, if multiple people say the same thing, that's even more telling. And this can be a broker, it can be a friend, even. Like, there's a lot of ways to get that intel. If you don't have a big team of 20, there's still great ways to, get that intel. But I love anonymous surveys because it really does give people that opportunity to say, like, hey, this part's great, but I have no idea what I'm doing in Follow Up Boss, or I don't understand what I'm supposed to do when I get a new lead, or turning in contracts seems really complicated. It's all great intel, for you to have.
Exactly. And then as you begin to review and document your processes, so think about a recipe that you do all the time, sort of rote by memory. And if you were to write it down, if Lee's like, how do you make that soup that you love to make? I have it in my head, but when I go to write it down, I might think about it in a different way. Like, that's stupid. Why would I do this before this? It would be faster if I did this part first to prep and then everything filled in from there. So just the act of you reviewing in detail and documenting by typing out your exact process for things, that's going to allow you to look through it through a different lens. And you're naturally going to begin to find inefficiencies. So just doing the exercise will be very revealing.
And I found another good thing that just reminded me of, it's funny, when I used to work in operations with the team here in Atlanta, they would always ask me, like, why do you go to these events and like speak at these events? Like, why do you go do these things? And I said, literally every time I do it, I'm rethinking, is that the best way to do this? Or I meet somebody else that's like, we do it this way. And I'm like, that's a great idea. We should do it that way. There's a lot of collaborativeness here. And most of you are probably Follow Up Boss users. Follow Boss community has great past tips and things you can research, great people you can connect with. How do you do this? You'll find the people doing this well are very willing to share. And that's also why we do a free webinar every month and a bajillion videos and a newsletter. We like sharing with the hope that you guys are going to use these things. Like, if Chris and I wanted to do this just by ourselves, we could just have a Zoom meeting, but we like sharing with you guys.
And we do that sometimes too.
And we do that too, but.
So, and something you hit on earlier that I just want to underline a little bit before we move on is the openness to this. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And if you believe, I don't need to take advice from anybody else. I know what my way is the best way. I can guarantee you that your way is not always the best way, and you can learn a lot from others. You may be able to offer a lot to others, but if that is your approach to your business, to real estate, to life, is why would I need to learn from other people? I got this. Like, I love your confidence. I applaud that. But you then make yourself the ceiling for your organization. You are going to be the one to hold them back if you aren't open to listening to other people's ways of doing things or what other people have to offer to coach you. So if a little bit of what I just said hit a nerve with you, please explore that and find more ways to be open. That doesn't mean you have to do everything exactly the way we say or your coach says or someone on stage says, but be open to making little adjustments and learning from other people, because you don't want to be the ceiling of your organization, because there are so many people to learn from. So please be open to mentorship, be open to coaching, whether it be you hire someone or you find someone that resonates with you on social media or YouTube or whatever, because there's anyway, that's the beauty of real estate. There's no one way to do it, and there's always ways to change and adapt and make things better. So don't box yourself in. All right, I'm going to step off of my soapbox. Let's dive in deeper on the key processes. So the first one on my list was recruiting.
Oh, yeah. And
recruiting.
I dropped a link earlier to that webinar. I'll drop it again since we're topical on it right now. But we did a webinar, I think it was last month or 2 months ago, pretty in depth on this. So we're not going to review all that. We will all, oh, that was the wrong link. I copied.
Copy and paste.
I selected the right one, but I did not paste the right one, apparently, nor did I read it before I hit return. So there's the recruiting webinar. So we're not going to go too deep in this one because we did it recently. But Chris, ultimately, we probably say this every time, and there's a reason we say it every time. You have to always be recruiting. It doesn't mean you have to bring on a new agent every week, but you can't go, oh crap, somebody just left, I need to start recruiting. It's not how it works. Just like online leads, got to nurture them.
Exactly. And you have to build that pipeline, and the pipeline, the length, the life, there we go, of a lead for a real estate recruit is a lot longer than a real estate transaction. So the best time to start recruiting is 2 years ago, but the other best time is right now, like planting these trees.
That's right.
So with your recruiting, you don't want to throw spaghetti at the wall. You need a proven, repeatable system that's going to help you bring in more agents. So have a place to store your recruiting leads that's separate from your real estate transaction. If you're sharing leads with your team, you don't want them accidentally soliciting one of your recruiting leads to buy or sell a home and transact with you. Keep those portioned off. We can show you how to do that in Follow Up Boss, and have email and text templates. Just like we talked about earlier with those micro decisions, if you are saying something or sending something to someone that's working, make a template out of it. Reduce the amount of thinking you have to do. Just like Steve Jobs and so many others, they wore a uniform every day. And that was because it was one less decision they had to make. And if you think about all these micro decisions, like, oh, I found this agent. Oh, what do I say? Here's what you say. Pull from this list of email templates, pull from this list of text templates, and you can get more done in less time because you're not getting too creative. And of course, you want to update them, as time goes on, but reducing those micro decisions so that you can be effective, so you can stick with what works and try something new. And if that starts working, add it to the list of things that works.
To your point earlier, Chris, I just want to reemphasize this. To your point earlier, the idea that you can use your creative energy around the conversation or changing the template a little bit to say, good morning, congrats on that closing, or hey, I saw your social media post, congrats on whatever. Use your energy for that, not staring at a blank screen or a blank handbook and going, oh man, what's next? It just allows you to do that and continue on. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, but I wanted to.
No, of course, of course. And also, if you are growing your team, it's hard for you to wear all of the hats at once. So if you find someone that's really adept at talking to other agents and selling them the vision of the way you practice real estate, having those templates in place, having a process in place for someone to step in and help you with recruiting will be really great to have them bring in more people while you concentrate on developing the other areas of your business. And also, by having a system around your recruiting, you can develop a visual pipeline. So you can see how many people you have that said they were interested in an interview, how many people that you met with for an interview that didn't commit. So whether it's on a whiteboard or you set it up with your deals within Follow Up Boss, being able to see those leads in that way, that Kanban style drag and drop with your deal boards, for whatever reason, that's what we used with the managers on the team that I was at. They were responsible for recruiting at their office level. And having the visual of those names in those cards to move along the pipeline was so much more effective than having a smart list around your recruiting. And final point on this, have smart lists for your recruiting. They don't need to be the same cadence as a buyer lead or a seller lead, but knowing this person said they were interested in an interview, I need to reach out to them more frequently than a lead that I'm nurturing, a recruiting lead that I'm nurturing that I may want to reach out to quarterly just to touch base. So setting up a designated area for your recruiting leads and adding smart lists. So, you know, these people are interested. They've indicated they want to come on, but they haven't done anything yet. You're going to want to talk to them much more frequently. You can set up smart lists just like you do your buyer and seller leads to make sure no one falls through the cracks, because these agents want to be courted. They don't want to feel like they're just a name on your list, like anybody wouldn't.
And you probably don't want somebody who would come over because you sent them an email. You're getting in a relationship with this person. Yes. We won't go too deep on that analogy like I often do, but like you don't want the person who's like, ooh, pick me. I got no better offers.
Right.
So you're gonna nurture them, and you should meet them a few times before you hire them.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
All right.
And seriously, it can't be any more similar to online lead conversion, right? You got top of the funnel people, you got people you need to nurture, you got people that are ready to talk now. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So just like you set up your systems around lead conversion, set up a system around that. All right, Lee, tell us about lead generation.
So yeah, lead generation, obviously this ties back to CRM a lot. And this is something that we obviously live in that space. But, you know, it's so important to track your lead sources. I actually told this story to somebody just yesterday for some reason, but way back in 2017 or so, when Zillow started doubling their prices on zip codes, you know, I was able to go straight into our Follow Boss and go, we made money off this lead that came from this zip code. They maybe didn't buy in that zip code, but I know what we paid Zillow to give us for that lead in that zip code. And so having these in your system, which for the most part, when set up, happen automatically, it's going to give you a lot of power to check those lead sources. Another story I told somebody else earlier today, you know, for some reason, somebody on our team closed a lot more Realtor.com leads. The only way I figured that out is I had great tracking set up in Follow Up Boss and my little closing spreadsheet. And I was like, that's interesting. Agent Y closes a lot of Realtor.com leads. And guess what? I can click a button in Follow Up Boss and say, hey, I'm going to give this dude all the Realtor.com leads. So having those sources, are they in flux? Look at them month over month, year over year. Are you paying more? Are you getting more? Are you closing any of them? Are they appointments? Stuff is all super simple to set up in Follow Up Boss, but you have to look at it for it to inform your decisions. And even further, we're in an industry where at best you're not making money for 90 days if somebody's ready to go. Probably more like a 3-month or a 6-month cycle, even if they're a warm or a lead. And so having that historical data is really the only way to forecast your business. The market is changing, the interest rates are changing, the seasons are changing, people are getting out of the business, new people are getting into the business.
Is it an election year? We're coming up on that again. Isn't that weird? How election years just...
It still blows my mind how when school goes back in, everything freezes for like 2 weeks. I don't get that one, but it does.
Don't worry, Nat. We're not going to go on a political rabbit hole, but the election years do affect your business. Every single time there was a major election, as we crept up on that election, business would slow it, and that helps you, because just like the reporting on your lead generation, if you have reporting over time of what your business is doing when, and you can pinpoint those points where something would stall, whether it's school back in session or whatever, then it will help you to prepare for those. You can increase your marketing just before. You can encourage your agents to increase their outreach. But coming back to lead, go ahead.
I'm going to go back to your point first. Back to the wheel, the spoke of the wheel type thing. Now this informs your agent count, right? Because if you are like, ooh, we have more good leads than we have agents, now you need to tweak that recruiting piece and add some more agents. If you don't have enough leads for all your agents and some are underperforming, maybe you need to come up with some criteria to either take them off leads or put them on probation or let them go if they're not working. All difficult things to do, but when you have data behind it, it's no longer a personal decision or an idea. It's, hey, we said if this person got down to less than 5 million a year, that's our minimum, we're going to have to let them go. You need to enforce that. So you have to have that policy so everything's not an exception.
right? And by tracking and reviewing your reporting on your lead generation, it'll help you develop a system. Every month I do this. Every quarter I do this. Annually, I do this with my leads. And so just inspecting, like we said earlier, will allow you to see those trends and see the patterns that naturally happen with any market, any business, and help you develop a system behind it to support you.
Absolutely. And so once we have our leads and things under control, what's happening, we got a plan for recruiting to grow the team. If you are good at recruiting, guess what? You're going to need to be good at onboarding on day 2. So
Yes.
let's talk about onboarding a little bit, Chris. I know, people like, hey, I'm recruiting. And then like, oh crap, somebody said yes. Now what?
Yeah, it's the opposite of, oh crap, somebody left.
Right.
So having something in place for them to come to. The last thing you want is for someone to leave their job with steady pay and benefits to come to you and you are scrambling on day 1. Those first impressions matter more to your new agent than the first impression when you walk in the door for your listing appointment. So smooth onboarding is the first step of your retention plan, because if you don't have smooth onboarding and something happens a little bit down the road, they're going to go, I knew it. I knew it from the start. So having a systematic approach so that you are treating each agent the same, regardless of whether they are a seasoned agent or an agent fresh out of licensing, giving them that solid first impression that we are a professional, well-prepared training machine, and the sphere that they might bring into your brokerage, that is going to be an attractor for you. Thank you, Trisha. We love Trisha. She's the best. So figuring out, start with your next agent that you bring on, or better yet, the last agent that you brought on. Let me get my tense right, my verbs. Go through what you did when you brought them on. I taught them this. They needed to learn this. They need email, business cards, name tags. Go through all the minutia of everything and put it into a list. Just type. And then go back and get it into an order that makes sense. This is what we need to do first. This is hinging on the first thing being done. So get it in an order that makes sense and build out the skeleton for your onboarding checklist. Figure out what needs to be done and by who. If you have a larger organization and you have people to support you, who needs to do those things? Who needs to be part of this shared checklist? And by putting this together, it's a living document. You're probably not going to get it right on the first try, but if you're doing this, then you will be better at it every single time moving forward, because you can reuse that checklist. Like, we're going camping this weekend and I'm so excited. And we have been camping before. So I pulled up my packing list for the camping trip that I used last time. I have less decisions to make about what we need to bring and what we need to pack and who's gathering what, because I'm reusing that checklist. So make, wherever possible, make slides instead of stairs for your organization. And this is definitely a slide that's going to help you retain that new agent, make their onboarding process really smooth, and ensure that you can bring on more agents with ease.
Yep. And I just dropped a link in the chat to our customizable templates. We have an onboarding template you can straight up grab. You can pop your logo into it. It's not perfect because we don't know your business, but it's, did they get business cards? Did you add them to Follow Up Boss? If you're a YLOPO user, did you add them to Stars with the link with how to add them to Stars? Are they on your website? Just key things, again, that set up this relationship good from the get-go. There's nothing worse than somebody's not on your website for 3 weeks after they join the team and they send out an announcement and they're not on the website. That's not cool. But to Chris's point, it is iterative for sure, but steal our shortcut and then add in your own. One last tip I'll add on onboarding too, and this seems a little crazy, but you can onboard your existing agents again. That might sound a little crazy, but you've probably added some systems, changed some things. You don't have to take 4 hours and do it, but just pull out that checklist and be like, hey, is Bobby on the website? Yep. Is Bobby in stars? Yep. Is Bobby in whatever? Oh no. Oh crap. We should get him a t-shirt or whatever.
Right.
But seriously, take from our guides. They are free. And I just dropped a link to all of them.
Exactly. And you can even, like the recruiting system that you can build out in your follow-up boss account, you can add your onboarding as an extension of that, either on a separate deal board that you move them to after they've moved their license to you, or by making that recruiting deal board even longer. So you can literally see where they are in the process, which is also a great communication tool. If you have maybe a sales manager or a mentor who's like, oh, well, where are they in the process? That's one less communication they have to make with you, one less back and forth. They can just log into Follow-Up Boss and see that if you give them access to it. So, all right. So we've recruited agents. We've onboarded agents. Now what do we do?
Well, we probably train them a little bit on what we would like them to do. So that seems like the next logical step to me. And a new agent training is frequently going to be different than your ongoing training, right? There should be some in the onboarding process. There typically would be a training component as well. Two of the things on our onboarding checklist include links to places you can go that are an easy button for you for training. One is our free Follow Boss course, just to give them the basics of how to use Follow Boss before you give them their login or put them on leads. So again, whether you consider it onboarding or just initial agent training, there's probably a heavier, are you taking recruits that have never written a contract before? That's probably going to be different training. Can you leverage some brokerage or real estate association training for these? A lot of times it really is smarter, not harder. You can go on YouTube and find videos that people like us make to use in your onboarding. So this isn't necessarily, oh, I got to spend 4 weeks writing my onboarding and figuring out all the things and making videos. Just borrow from what we've got. Follow Boss has great videos. A bunch of other people have great videos you can use, but really getting people up and running. And I think a lot of times too often, this is going to broach a couple of our topics. I think a lot of times people recruit on leads. And I think that's a really terrible way to go, because number one, you're basically that's the carrot you're waving in front of them. Whereas the reality of it is you need to get them in your system. You need to go have them go call some old pond leads or upload their sphere and send out an announcement that they've joined your team or brokerage. Those are all things that need to happen. And I think too many of us just put people on leads day one without giving any explanation of, we expect you to nurture this. If you put them here, do this. If you're not going to work it, put it in a pond or send it back to the ISA. So I think, again, this slow roll, if we're not selling them on leads and then get them on leads day one, that also makes for a much better relationship than on week 2 when they're like, well, crap, I called 400 leads last week and nobody answered.
I just threw dynamite into the lead pond because I didn't have any instruction.
Right. But that said, that ongoing training is equally important. And we've done a prior webinar on this as well. But for me, I did weekly trainings for almost a year and a half with my team. And then we moved to monthly. And then we got to the point where we just went and had breakfast for a meeting because we were everybody knew what to do. It was a social event and it was fun again. Mm-hmm. But you can't overtrain people. And doing it at scale where you have a planned meeting with a planned topic and documentation and follow-up videos, and you're doing it with them, is really going to pay dividends down the line. And the more you can also document that, the more you're going to have your future training. I'm not sure if she's on, but we've worked with somebody as well to have a monthly training calendar. And that's been really helpful to have that far out in advance and go, oh, I already know what November is. I already know what December is. And they're actually rinse and repeat topics because they're going to be annual topics, right? Like the contracts change every year. Some of these things change every year. So we're not reinventing the wheel, but we do need to tweak, those trainings as we go.
Right. And don't be resistant to that reiterative training. A lot of us as leaders within our organization go, oh, I'm so frustrated. I've told them this 1,000 times. Well, if you didn't have to tell them that 1,000 times, they might be the leader of an organization instead of you. So someone very wise told me once, that you need to accept your role as the leader and accept their role as the follower and treat everyone accordingly. And that doesn't mean to talk down to them, but don't get upset with them when you have to repeat yourself. Don't get upset that you have to retrain on a topic that don't put the expectations of what you would do on the people that are looking up to you, because that's your role. Embrace it and lead them accordingly. And that's a big part of training. So how do you develop a training program for your agents? Start with what you know you need to train them on and utilize those outside sources. Like Lee said, cobble it together. Don't feel like, oh, I need to make 1,000 videos by myself in my basement. You can use other people. It's good to have varying voices with your training, because if you're just listening to one person talk for hours and hours and hours, you'll become like the teacher from the Peanuts. So use varying voices to give them some variety and different points of view. And then start with if you're starting from scratch, obviously look at where your onboarding agents need to begin, but with your ongoing training with your existing agents, just start with the questions that you're being asked now. So if you have an organization of 25 and one person asks you a question, you can assume that 4 to 5 other people within the organization probably have the same question. They're just not asking, or they're just not asking you. So you need to do this in 3 parts. Train the person that asks you the question, answer the question for them. Film an evergreen video. Step 2, film an evergreen video where you don't say, hey, Lee, or name, just say, hi, and begin teaching. Teach on the topic in an evergreen way and circulate that to everyone on your team. That's step 2. And then the third step, yes, Loom is great for this. And then the third step is to download that into a library of sorts, a resource, wherever it is, whether it's on your Google Drive or some other thing that they can log into that's searchable. Searchable is the key word there, because Trainual is really great. That's what I use to train my agents. Trainual is not terribly searchable. So it was very difficult for them to go back and go, oh, what was that they said about such and such? So I like to have a agent resource library in my Drive. It was beautifully divided up by topic, folders for everything. You want to make sure it's very easy to use and it's somewhere that you're always pointing them to. So as you answer these questions, train the person in front of you, train the whole team, and then train everyone coming in, and also give them that place to go back to. And as you do that with just the incoming questions that you have coming in, because you're circulating regular answers to questions, you're going to be building that library up. It will be really, really healthy and something you can use to recruit new agents with all of the resources that you have in pretty short order, if you stick to that 3-step process.
Yeah, there's another piece of that too, Chris, I realized we didn't overtly mention. I feel like it's worth saying. You're also creating a culture of like, you can ask me questions and I'm going to help you. Or you can ask our ops person questions and they're going to help you, whatever your structure is. But yeah, that makes people more open to tell you when things aren't going well, or they have a problem or a concern, or, hey, I don't understand how to do this. And that's a much better environment to run a business in than when everyone's scared to ask you a question, or they think you're too busy to answer their question. So to Chris's point, the more you can take that one-off ask, turn it into something that can not only train everybody currently, but build your training as you go, that's 100% the only way to do it.
Absolutely. So with your training, another good thing that I think a lot of people don't spend enough time on is the lead management. All leads aren't the same. They shouldn't be treated the same. So teaching your people exactly what should be done with each type of lead, documenting it, and then sharing it with your team. And I'm going to say it again, it reduces those micro decisions. They aren't going, well, should I text them 3 times? I texted them yesterday. Should I text them again? Should I call them? What do I do? Because everyone's working in this unified direction, you can say, I want to text, a call, and an email on day 1. On day 2, I want to text, and a call. And then day 3, I want you to email again. If someone laid that out for me and it worked, obviously you're going to use this based on your rates of success. We know this works generally. That's going to improve your conversion rate overall, and it's going to cut down on people sending the wrong things at the wrong time, approaching different leads in various stages of the funnel. They might have a top of funnel lead that they go right for like it's the bottom of the funnel. So without knowing the specifics on how to handle each type of lead, most agents are going to do way too little, or some of them will do way too much, and they will call and call and call and call, and they will never move on to the other leads. That's the rarity, but I've seen it happen. And you're like, you've made 1,000 phone calls and you've converted none. What are you doing? And it's because they don't know what to do. So they're doing the wrong thing. So lead them and let them know the prescription for every type of lead that's coming in and what you want done to it. Of course, they can put their own personal flair on it, but if you can add to that document, this is the type of email, this is the email I would send on day 2. This is the text I would send on day 3, or better yet, build those into templates into your system as well. That's going to help them to convert at a higher level and help you to build your business.
And back to this hub idea, if you're paying attention to your reporting, if you trained your people to do what you want them to do, you've got this reporting data. Now this is going to much more inform how many calls does a Ylopo lead need in the first 3 days? How many calls does a Realtor.com lead need in the first days? So again, this is the weird blessing and the curse of this, right? You're not going to be able to do all of it right at once, but maybe it's an eat the frog type of thing. You're like, I really hate this one, I'm going to do it first. But all these things inform the other things. And that's what we realize is really difficult for people to do, is not only if you're still in production, especially, do you have to think about all these things, but they all interact. And it's very complicated, but I can guarantee you they're very worth doing, even if they're not that great. I very frequently say you don't even need a good plan, you just need a plan. And that's really evidenced by many years of doing this.
I think that's very sound advice. So your retention, it's so much easier to retain agents than to recruit them. So you need to have a strategy around retention. So add a pond to your Follow Up Boss account with all of your current agents' names in it, and put a smart list on it so you can see exactly who you haven't reached out to in a while. Depending on the size of your organization, you may want to set that smart list at every 30 days. Now, I'm not talking about your one-on-ones, your sale. Oh, I saw Chris at the sales meeting, that's my check. No, reach out to them, talk to them like they're humans that you care about. And that simple outreach of, hey, how are you? How's it going? Make notes in your Follow Up Boss account. So-and-so's dog died. One of my agents, her dog passed away, and I reached out to her and asked her about it. And then I made myself a note, and I reached out to her again 3 weeks later to ask how she was doing after her dog passed. So I touched her twice about the dog dying. She talked about that for like a year. People they were like, hey, so-and-so told me how touched she was that you reached out to her when her dog passed away. And of course, I genuinely cared. I have a dog. You can probably hear him back here now making noise during our webinar. But I understand how bad that hurts. So it's not a thoughtless, callous touch. I cared. I was invested in the conversation, but I also had an organization of 250 people. I couldn't count on myself to remember to follow back up with her 3 weeks later. So leaving yourself those little notes, it really goes a long way, and it doesn't cost you anything but a little few minutes of your time. So track your engagement so you see who you're reaching out to, who's involved. That way you're cutting down on favoritism. If you're only reaching out to the people that you see regularly, that's going to, you're not touching the people who are working really hard, who maybe like to work from home and don't come into the offices regularly.
Yeah. And another great thing about having them in your system, I always encourage people to do this. You should probably be sending out an internal weekly email as well. Hey, here's a link to our intranet site with all the training. Hey, don't forget we have a sales meeting tomorrow at 3. Hey, there's an event on Thursday for the new contracts. Like those touches, to Chris's point, they don't count as one-on-one touches, but they're really nice. It occurs to me it's almost that social media balance, right, of personal versus business. Like, yeah, it's going to be business. Hey, don't forget we have a meeting. Hey, with this. Hey, here's a new training video. But also, like Chris said, how's it going? Like I noticed whatever, or I saw on Facebook that this and that happened. Like, how are you doing? Really important touches. And again, like do those now because you can't do them after they give you your notice.
Yes. I made a newsletter. It was a 1-page, sometimes a scary 2-page, but it was built like you would get for your school or your church. It was a 1-page newsletter, and I made announcements. I trained on the code of ethics. I had one little chunk out of the license law in it and all kinds of updates. And because it was, again, cutting down on decisions, it wasn't a blank page. I was remaking it every week. So I knew I needed something from the license law. I needed one of the code of ethics. I needed a weird, funny story that happened last week from one of our agents. Like that formulaic approach was so helpful in me not having to, because if you said, hey, make me a newsletter, and I didn't have a template, I would spend 4 hours on it. But by having that template to work off of, which applies to everything we've talked about here today, that's going to help you to streamline those ideas into what you can actually use. All right. So awesome. Transaction management. We're working along the pipeline here. We're talking about lead management. We're going to transaction management. So yes, you can add amazing vendors like Sisu or Open to Close to your system. But if you know your process and you aren't ready to add an outside third party to your system to help you manage your transactions, you can build this out in your CRM. So deciding at what point in the transaction the client needs an educational email or a request for information, you can use stages and tags to build that out. And if it's not
I want to lean into that super fast just because like we always talk about software for this, right? And there's a bunch of great software for it. But I think if you start with your process, it's going to help you inform what's the best software for you. If the goal is like, we want this, or it needs to be high touch, or we want somebody else to manage it, get your ideal list anyway, and then figure out what system it works in. It may just work in Follow Balls. We do have people that do this just in Follow Balls. So again, figuring out what you want and backing into how to do it is a more powerful way to do this instead of like trying to finagle somebody else's stuff to do what you think you want it to do.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the client experience. How do you want your client to feel? Do you want this to be very automated? Bing, bang, boom. I'm sending out all these emails. They're getting this at every single point. Or do you want it to be a very human touch? Think about how you want them to feel working with your organization, and use your CRM to send your newsletters, your invitations to events, send special offers. And even add your past clients to a pond with smart lists, just like you're using for your recruiting leads, just like you're using for your existing agents. And make sure you're touching them outside of those impersonal, hey, I want to invite you to this hockey game touches. Create a cadence for them where you're talking to them quarterly on a human level, or someone from your organization is, because even if they're not ready to transact, they might know someone who they can send your way because you're so attentive to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such an important piece of it. And so now it brings us to offboarding. We're going to chunk through the last few of these. Chris mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate. I think we're going to do webinars on each of these because they're obviously very in depth, but we just wanted to go high level, all the things. Offboarding. I almost always tell people you can really just reverse your onboarding list. It's not always quite that simple, but that's a great place to start. If you just flip your onboarding list, instead of add to follow boss, remove from follow boss. But there are going to be some things like, for example, if they have a follow boss number, you probably want to move that number to a team inbox. So any inbound calls still come to your company, a lot of things like that. So there are some nuances. But again, if you don't have this yet, just flip your onboarding list and be mindful of any other specifics of things that may have changed over time. And so having these things is great, Chris, but if they're not written down, having to remember these things sounds terrible to me.
Yes, absolutely. And just use the tools that you have now and just get started. You don't need a huge staff in order to set up streamlined operations for your business. Set them up within your follow-up boss account or whatever CRM is using. Go through the list, and we'll put this in the email that goes out tomorrow, and just start building the skeleton around it and then fill in over time. But having a place that your people can go to and reference these things are super important, because the more people who are involved, they can add to them as well. Hey, I actually added this step in and it saved me a lot of time. Let me go in and do this. So documenting, defining your processes, just use what you have to start and then go from there. Don't wait until I can afford this or until I bring on this person. I can't stress enough that you just need to get started, and it will become easier, because if you're looking at it as this big mountain, it's not something you have to get done all at once. Any incremental improvements you can make with your SOPs, your systems, and your operations are going to go miles with your team. So don't think you have to have it all done or all perfected before you roll it out. Just roll out what you have.
And Google Docs are really the perfect thing for this, because it's such an easy way to iteratively add things. If you want somebody to collaborate with you, you can add them. Google Docs are a great way to get things down and then determine what system is best to put them in. And so now we're headed into technology and software. And I want to just reiterate what I said before. If you have the outcome that you want and the checklist, it's going to be a lot easier to pick what system and what way to set that up, versus buying a system because it sounds great and then going, oh crap, now I have to build. What if it's a cash deal? What if there's an inspection and not that? What if they have a well inspection but not a termite inspection? Like all those things, it's much easier to take the system and bake it back to the software. And we'll share this out, I think, with our recording. At FubCon, we shared a list of a tech stack we recommend. We'll figure out a way to share that out with you guys. But, again, it's more about knowing the outcome you want and then building backwards into what tools will get you that outcome. And then for better or worse, kind of back to the Google Doc concept, these are going to break. You're going to add a fifth agent. You're going to be like, oh, crap, now we have to add this thing, and we've got to add that to the onboarding and then to the training and then to all these other things. So they're not set it and forget it. Yes, it's important that you get to a stopping point so you're not doing it forever, but just develop the attitude that these are iterative and you are going to have to update them slightly, not reinvent the wheel, just update them slightly as you grow. If, as changes happen, if you change brokerages or start your own brokerage or whatever, they're always going to be in flux. But in another way to do that too, to Chris's point earlier, is just getting feedback from your agents. Hey, is this running well? Hey, do you know how to do this? Hey, do you understand how to do this or where to log in to do that? But yeah, so the technology is always a good part of that. But again, start simple. Know it's going to be iterative, and, check out all our free stuff that we've shared.
Absolutely. We'll get that out tomorrow. I want to thank you all for being here and for staying with us for exactly an hour. I know we threw a lot your way. We're going to send this recording out. We're going to give you all the resources that we talked about. And please just don't take it as an overwhelming thing. Just get started and chip away at what you have, and you will increase the effectiveness of your operations in a big way as you go. So you can find us online. You can look at all of our free resources to help you do this. You can hire us to rebuild or build your follow-up boss account or do fractional operations work. If you aren't sure where to start, we are happy to do that for you. And we will send you links on how to get us to help you in either way. Tomorrow, we'll have that out to you. Thanks for joining us.